Give me a second here. Okay, so just real quick, as you have all sort of said, most companies are barely scratching the surface of PR's potential. And the other thing is they make the mistake of thinking that it's only about publicity, which means get me in front of some press. And PR is so much more than that. So one of the things I wanted to do today was sort of challenge the way that people think about PR and to let them realize that just relying on press releases or going to some of the main trade, the main media is going to be the way to do PR, because that's really not the way it works anymore. And in fact, there's a wonderful tie-in between content marketing and PR happening. So there's some hidden potential there. So I asked you this poll question, so we'll jump forward from this. A little bit about my company. It's a marketing and public relations company. I started it about 30 years ago. There's a handful of us that work together, and we mainly work with tech companies, although we have worked with some nonprofits and some educational organizations. So most of my experience comes from that, and I'll be relying on that when I give you some of the examples today. And before starting my own company, I did work in-house and agency side, and I've also been a professor at San Jose State, and I wear many other hats as well. Can anybody answer this question? Has your perception of PR changed at all? Given what your answers have been so far, I'm not really sure what you would say to this, but maybe just pipe up if you have, if you feel like one of these answers fits maybe what your thought process is about PR. And Dennis, maybe you can start us off with.
Sure. For me, the answer is D, because I was responsible. PR was one of the things I was responsible for in my last full-time role. It was about 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had an external agency that we worked with. And since then, I went out on my own as a consultant, but a lot has changed in the last 6 years. So I'm not even, and I haven't done much PR recently. And
Right.
given everything that's changed in marketing and with the emergence of AI, I'm really not sure where PR fits today, or like, what it's all like,
Right.
what it's all about. Like because I kind of lapsed on doing PR in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think marketing in general, I also am trying to figure out where does marketing fit with the emergence of AI. So I'm kind of I've got questions.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Anybody else have any?
Yeah,
well, I could add on to that a little bit in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of two things. One, back at Intel, I knew of a campaign where the whole thing was to do PR and get visible with the product. And after spending a lot of time, a lot of man hours, a lot of money, et cetera, on this, it generated a rumor. so it wasn't necessarily very successful. The other thing is that my current company, we basically don't know what the content is going to be, and it depends on the area. So we've kind of ruled out. The reason I wanted to attend this and find out what's current in PR is kind of like Dennis in a way. I just don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anyone else want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to throw out there, I always thought of PR is building trust and building awareness, which sure sounds an awful lot like top of funnel marketing. There's a lot of overlap there, but it also, I'm with Dennis, I'm still thinking about it as B. I had clients in the past ask, well, what about social media? What should do? Very unsophisticated from a marketing perspective, manufacturing companies. And it's like, well, think of social media as a PR channel, and they kind of got that. And then during COVID, because I work with smaller companies, where internal PR is never really considered, but during COVID, it's like, oh, wow, okay, now I understand the internal aspect of PR communications.
Right.
It just totally changed my perception on internal communications.
This is so great to get everybody's input. And I do appreciate people chiming in. I don't want to just, talk for half an hour. So if you have a question or a thought, please just, ask me. We don't need to wait necessarily to the end. But let's dive into that. So you've kind of hit on a lot of different things, and I wanted to start with what the potential of PR is. And if we go sort of to the altruistic view, it can deeply influence people's opinions about a company. We can position a company in a market. We can build trust with all the different types of audiences. It's a great way to communicate messages. You can connect with lots of different communities, your stakeholders, your employees, all kinds of different folks. You can literally change perceptions. You can use all your persuasion techniques, to get people to do things. You shape that narrative. And overall, you're the actual caretaker of all the brand communications for a company. So if you think about the potential for PR, it can actually be huge and ends up touching, many, many, many different aspects inside a company. So it's a shame when people only think PR as the people that write the press release and send it out, because it can touch on many, many other things. So we're going to dive into all the aspects of it, but I want you to be thinking about sort of like, what are the things that PR can do to really make a difference in a company? So you notice I'm not talking about a tactic. I'm talking about, an actual outcome. And it's all those soft things that are really hard to measure. But the golden rules of PR are still sort of the same, right? You have to know your audience. You have many, many different types of audiences. You have to be able to create a message for that audience. You need to be thinking about what is the news, what's unique, what's worth talking about, and you have to be able to tell those some compelling stories. So what we're going to talk about today are sort of some of the problems with a traditional PR approach and the mainstream media, some content PR ideas, some actionable strategies, and then just touch a little bit on some of the tools in AI. So most companies are not using PR right. They're only scratching the surface, and because they're using sort of that outdated toolbox, meaning that they are only thinking about PR in terms of the media relations and, writing that press release. They're not thinking about all the other ways that PR can help write those messages and get the stories into, all the different audiences. And they're also just focusing on some of the perhaps high profile media targets. They're not thinking about all the many different, micro influencers out there as a way to reach, an audience. So there's actually a better way to do it. And then, as you guys know, if you're working in content marketing and product marketing, the silo effect is very real. There's not an integration among PR and some of the other disciplines in marketing. But this is just ripe for all kinds of collaboration. So that's, part of what I wanted to do in coming to talk to people, is because we do need to work together and share all the different ideas and work together better. There's also a tendency to think about PR as being reactive. We need to solve that problem, or we're just waiting for some big news announcement. You're not thinking about the evergreen things that you need to do. And that is where companies fall down in doing the basic sort of bread and butter of PR, is that there are lots of different evergreen activities that can be happening. So you're not just, product announcement focused. And then, of course, people aren't necessarily using all the data and insights that are there. Hopefully AI is going to help us with a lot of that. So we all know the media landscape has been changing. It's been changing for, I don't know, 10 years or more. But doesn't it seem like every single year that there's more and more outlets that are just shutting down, or they're moving to subscription models, or maybe they only take sponsored content? And of course, we all hear about the reporters that are getting laid off. It is just super, super hard to, get into some of the mainstream media. And if you're working for a startup company or trying to get the coverage that maybe you got 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, none of that stuff is happening. So all of your, PR tactics in terms of trying to get coverage from the media is also, much more difficult. And then we have all these new micro channels happening. Who knew that you would be going after TikTok news anchors or, going after Substack communities and Slack and Reddit and all of that. There's so many more specialized audiences now that startups can go to, or any company for that matter. But since I mainly deal with startups and some of you do as well, that's really where we need to be spending our time. And then you all know that the way that we consume media is very fragmented. Does anybody actually hold an actual physical newspaper in their hand anymore? Or, the way that we consume our, television broadcast, it's all streaming. Everything is just wildly different. And so what this means for PR is, even though the traditional media outlets are sort of shrinking, they still have some sway over some of the other companies. Like, we know that the trade press still does pay attention to what some of the business press writes about things, but the mainstream media just are not the gatekeepers that they used to be in the past. Yeah. Okay. And then I don't know if any of you have seen Seth Godin's new book, This is Marketing. Amanda here just sent me it. And I love this quote that he said about getting the word out. And he calls it also selfish shouting. We can't market anymore to the anonymous masses because we have to be focused on people who are willing participants. And that means effective marketing is really going after the people who want to be engaged with us. So if you think back to the time that maybe all of us maybe started out in our careers, we would have those trade shows and companies would have a big product announcement, big news announcement, and everything would be geared towards, that one day and time when the news came out. So marketing was focused on that. Sales was, PR was, everybody was all geared toward that one time, and you just sent the news out. Well, we all know that just doesn't really operate anymore. That's we've now moved from the mass communication to the, one-to-one or more personalized communication. So what we see is that PR is kind of evolving into a content PR category. And some of you may think, what is this? But it's doing that shift from being media-centric to more audience-centric. And you are using all of the digital and social platforms that are available, all the different content types, with more of an emphasis on storytelling. So that means not necessarily as news oriented or announcement oriented. And the lines between PR and marketing are sort of blurring a little bit. Oops, I flipped too fast there. And then why content marketing works is because it is always on. There's not a time that you're going dark. You're able to get the news, to get your content out a little bit more regularly, and you can stay away from the busy times that happen in the trade world. You can sort of control your own editorial calendar a little bit more and have some more direct communication with your audiences. So let's look at some of the strategies that are involved in this. I like to think of this as adopting a newsroom mindset. So that means thinking like a journalist. And that means developing a nose for news. Now you might wonder, why am I talking about a journalist? We just talked about how, the press is sort of shrinking. There's not that many journalists out there anymore. But the journalist approached what was happening with this set of objective, points of view. And we find that when we talk to, clients and they have something that they want the press to know about, whether it's news or not, we kind of run it through a list of questions, a litmus test. And we need to ask, who cares about this? And we often find that if there's some sort of, news announcement and we're not able to answer that who cares question, then it has to be moved over into some other kind of category or reconsidered and repackaged. What's the relevance of this to what's happening in today's world? And what's the impact of this on the industry? And what's the overall fit with what's happening in the trends? So having this kind of news approach is a PR technique that I thought that other people in marketing and content marketing could use, because it's paying attention to all those little unique things that a PR person is always thinking about, and is making sure that you take those and then figure out what to do with them. I wanted to give you an example of something from one of our clients. This is the Presto Foundation. So they're an open source project, a SQL engine that Meta initially created, and then they donated to the open source community, and it's run by the Linux Foundation. So we were talking with the marketing folks, and they were saying that IBM and Uber, as members of this foundation, had done some work on the project, and they were going to be donating it to the Presto Foundation. And in the conversation, they also mentioned that they had come up on their, for their anniversary of Presto actually being developed. And so we heard that and we say, there's a great way to actually pull those things together to make it into something that is news oriented. Now, you might be laughing at me saying it's a birthday. What is that all about? But it was a great rallying point for the company, because they did this video. They got all the different companies, IBM, Uber, a bunch of other companies to participate in the video. And then, they did a press release, they had blog posts on it, they had coverage, they mentioned it when they had their main conference, and people were able to sort of rally around the fact that, recognizing the gifts that IBM and Uber had made, and then to also acknowledge, the passing of time and how long that Presto had been around. One of the other strategies that we like to use is story packages. And this isn't used so much in the trade world. It's used more on the consumer side of things, at least in our experience. But I really like story packages. They're like a secret weapon. And you find that when you pull together all the elements of a story, again, thinking like a journalist, you're giving the reporter everything that they need to cover that story. So in a sense, you're almost guaranteeing that somebody is going to take this and run with it. And it makes the story so much better than it would be without all of that. So what does this mean? This means that you not only have the list of the people that you want a journalist to talk to internally, but maybe you have some articles in the industry that actually support the main point you're trying to put across. You pull together the photos that would go along with this. Maybe there's some video. Maybe an executive in the company wrote a blog post on it or a LinkedIn post. You gather all that information together. Or maybe you even list the name of some industry analyst, that you've already talked to who supports this point of view. It's gathering all the information together and then giving it to that reporter. We find that makes a big difference. And if you think about it, in the filmmaking world, they talk about coverage, and that's shooting a scene from all the different angles, the wide angle, the close up, etc., so that uh, the the director has more flexibility when they're editing so that they can get everything that they need. So in a sense, the story package that you pull together is that same thing. You're giving them all the different aspects that they can cover on a particular story. And the reason why people don't necessarily use a story package as much is it's kind of hard to pull all the pieces together, especially if it's a startup company, they're just getting started in something, maybe they don't have all those assets put together. So it's definitely something that you find that you're, trying to pull all the pieces together. So it's actually harder work to do than just, gathering up a bunch of things. You have to like weave a story together to make it happen. Just a quick look at some of the things. I think I outlined a lot of it, but you can imagine all the different pieces. And if you're a content marketing person, this is where you pull together all the things that you've developed into one overall story. So I wanted to give you an example from one of our clients. This is one of our nonprofit clients. They're not the cows. It's the Marin Agricultural Land Trust up in Marin County. And they're the first land trust organization started back in the 80s. And the whole point was to preserve the Marin farmland. A lot of these families have had their farms and ranches for generations. And as you might imagine, it's expensive and challenging to own the land and keep everything up. So the land trust is purchasing the land from the families and then doing everything they can to preserve it and conserve it and let them continue to run that. So they didn't have necessarily products, right? Because they're working with all these different farmers and ranches. These are families. And the idea was to show what was happening in the world of sustainable agriculture, what was happening from malt's point of view, how malt was doing a good job being a steward of these ranches and farms, and how they might all help each other so more people would want their farm and ranch to be purchased by malt. So big, lofty ideas here. So what we decided to do was to put together a series of story packages, and one that I'm showing you here was an example about small agriculture and how it helps sustainable farming. And we actually listed 6 of the different farms. I'm just showcasing the Strauss one here. Some of you that are from California might recognize the Strauss brand if you have milk or ice cream. And it takes an idea using an industry article from the New York Times, also supported by a quote from, Senator Cory Booker, outlines some bullets. And then there were a list of all the different farms, an example of what they are doing. And this was pitched to a selection of local press, in the area that they might want to go and interview some of these folks and pull together the whole story. So we had a variety of assets that we sent along with this. And we did have a reporter from the Business Journal take us up on this. She said she was so thrilled to get all of this information pulled together, and it actually helped her sell the story to her editor and then made her job easier in pulling together everything that she needed to write the story. So here's a quick example of that story. Okay, so one of the other things that we like to do in the world of PR is to focus on themes. Now you might wonder, how is this a strategy? You ask. Imagine that you're giving a party, but you don't tell anybody the reason for a party. People just say, I'm coming to your house on Saturday night, and what is it that we're doing? But if you have a party and let's say, you're celebrating someone's anniversary, you know what's going to happen. You feel better, you understand what's expected of you, how to dress appropriately, etc. You know what the theme is of the party. It's so much better when you have a theme that you're rallying around and pulling together all of your materials. So let's talk about some of that. The thematic campaign allows you to focus your messaging around a central idea. And then you're able to create cohesion across multiple different channels. And the reason why it works is that it builds consistency. It really helps internally, and it reinforces the thought leadership and goes well beyond just a one-off announcement. And it also uses many of the different story packages that you may have put together and your different content pieces. So I want to give you an example from one of our clients. We had worked with Samsung and the Samsung Catalyst Fund, which is one of their venture capital firms. And they had chosen a theme of catalyze a better future. And this was to address sustainability and global health. And they wanted to be able to talk about how technology was being used for good. And their idea is they were going to start out in the healthcare world and move to several different industries and have different themes. And so this one started out with an idea of having a video, having the executives interview an industry leader in the healthcare world, and being able to dive into the deeper issues about what's working, what's not working, what do we see coming in the future, what do you need from technology, you know, kind of one of those real deep dives. So you can tell that this wasn't a puffery piece. You know, for Samsung, they were talking about bigger issues, not just necessarily their products. So it created momentum over a series of months, and it allowed them to develop a bunch of different pieces of content. So here's an example of the video, and there was also a white paper that was put together, as well as a blog post on this and email campaign. And Amanda, I remember that you were helping to work on this. Was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, well, it was a really, really interesting sort of approach because obviously as an investment arm of this big tech company, you know, they have these portfolio companies that are doing really interesting things. And so it was a way to showcase their portfolio companies, showcase their overall investment strategy, tie it into the basic fundamental thing that tied it all together was data, how to use data to basically improve things in the world. And as Colleen said, they started with healthcare because that's such an easy one to really understand the good that can be done with that. But then the next one that they did was quantum computing. They had a quantum computing portfolio company. And so it was just this way of taking that very sort of simple idea, data help, you know, to make it be helpful, and making it become real in all these different ways, you know, like Colleen said, videos, articles, white papers, blog posts, social media, of course, and just sort of tying it all together. And they got a lot of good attention, and it also was interesting because it upped their status as an investment entity, which also made it easier for them to attract other companies that, you know, that they wanted to invest in, to have them choose them. So it was a really good sort of circular good all the way around. So yeah, it was a good project.
Great. I'm so glad you remembered all those other details. And one of the other aspects of this whole catalyze your future theme was that their annual CEO summit kind of fit in under that. So this was something that they would have every year where the CEO would talk, but then they'd invite, you know, industry leaders, everybody have their time on the stage. There'd be sort of the area where everybody would have their booths. You know, there's lots of things happening there. And obviously there were many PR, marketing, social aspects to this as well. And you can tell how something like this would give you many different content pieces. But it was great to see how it all fit in under this overall umbrella theme. Okay, one of my other favorite strategies is the power of contributed content. This is a game changer for most companies. And I have to tell you, among the startups that we have worked with, very, very few have been doing this before we started to work with them. This is sort of the unsung hero in any PR person's toolkit. And the reason why I don't know, I think more people should be doing this, but let's get into a little bit more. So almost every single publication, whether it's trade, general, you know, mainstream, they're looking for some kind of content. It can be guest opinion pieces, which is almost one of the easiest to do, viewpoint articles, feature articles, technical articles. You probably know the drill. And then there's the other, you know, world of providing them with video content and audio content too. So there's always lots of opportunity for contributed content out there. The reason why it's great is that you get that third party endorsement, right? Another company has given you, you know, space to print your article. It helps you reach your audience. You're able to put your messages in there. Obviously, you all know that it can't be a commercial for your company. It has to be objective. Some people find that hard. They just want to speak only in you know, sales promotion speak, but it allows you to go after some of the top-notch publications, and maybe you have a great viewpoint that you want to give to them. So it's really excellent for executives in a company who want to up their visibility a little bit. Maybe they want to start building some thought leadership. It's a great way to put that program together. And we found that a lot of people are afraid to say that they have an opinion that they want to get across. So one of the things that you can do as a PR or content person is to really encourage the people to start with a general idea and then work with you as the communications expert, because you can help shape it and make it into something that's going to be accepted at a publication. But these really work. So I wanted to give you one example from a client of ours. The client is Splashtop. They're in the remote access software world. And we were working with them right at the start of the pandemic. So you can imagine everybody's working from home, and they had a lot of, you know, new business because of the remote access software. So we were thinking, let's take advantage of this whole work from home idea, and let's talk about the implications of that. And maybe we should use the CEO and get some, you know, bylined articles by him to help raise their visibility. Now, they've been in business 15 years and they had never done anything like that. He actually had great ideas. He just needed to be coaxed into having them. But I really love this one headline that we came up with: the work from home genie is out of the bottle, meaning, you know, you can't really go back now that we've all had the, you know, the luxury and being able to work from home, and companies realize that it can work. So we're able to get that placed in a number of different places. And to this day, he is still writing these guest opinion pieces and having them be picked up. And you all know, of course, that LinkedIn is a great place to start, maybe even before you get your contributed articles placed. Another client of ours, Ayla Network, they're in the IoT space, and their goal was to get some targeted coverage amongst a lot of verticals. So in the smart home and the HVAC market and appliance, you know, and maybe IoT specific publications. So we did a number of technical articles and feature articles in those publications, which then led to IoT Evolution asking the president to have a regular column. And that then led to him getting asked by the Forbes Business Development Council to contribute to them as well. So this sort of snowballed the whole contributed content world of things that we had done for Ayla Networks. In fact, they had one of their customers from their customer advisory board come to them and say, you know, every time I look at a magazine, I find an article from Ayla in there. What are you guys doing that you are all over the place? We considered that a personal win that that was happening. And then, of course, you know about the magic that happens from your contributed content, right? You know, is this superpower of helping with the SEO, building the credibility, getting you the links, increasing your EEAT, you know, helping you appear higher in the search engine ranks. So contributed articles are amazing, and not enough people use them. And if any of you were looking for a way to do a quickie contributed article, here's a very easy place to start. There's Authority Magazine. There's a set list of questions. You pick a topic that relates to you and you submit it to them. Not all of them get accepted, but you know, if you have a good, you know, if you answer the questions well, you usually can get picked up, and then it'll appear after a month, month and a half. So that's something to check out. There's a lot of topics that they cover, and many of them are general or personal, but there are some technology-oriented ones if you are in the tech world. And those of you that are, you know, doing AI stuff, there's definitely AI-related ones in there too. And then one other area to consider is to have yourself be considered as an expert source, and to contribute to some of the opportunities that the journalists put up in some of these publications, where they're looking for story ideas, or they want somebody to contribute 500 words to something, or maybe they're looking for someone to interview. These are the places to go to get those story ideas too. So let's look at some of the AI tools. Now, I know you probably are all using lots of different things, and you know, I've used a few myself. I haven't used all of those here, but as you can imagine, we all know it helps with our content generation, but we all also know that you can't just take what it says. You have to check it and refine it and make it, you know, personal. But it can also help with your media monitoring. It can help you find trends. It can help you decide on headlines. You can do a little bit of analysis on it. So PR people can use this. I think it was Valerie that was really interested in some of these. You know, you can create multiple different versions for pitches that you're doing. You can also use it to help identify some trending topics and what's already been covered. You can adjust the messaging if there's some negative sentiments there. You can also use Spark Turo. I've heard a lot of good things about that. I haven't had a chance to use it yet myself, you know, to find out some audience insights. And then, of course, you know, Muck Rack and Prowly are, you know, more PR oriented as well. So let's bring it all together. We talked about having that news mindset so you can figure out things that are going to be unique and worthy, doing story packages, having a theme that you can roll everything up under, an umbrella theme, doing the contributed content. So let's go back to the potential of PR and think about how some of these strategies will help you achieve this potential. So we do have the power to influence and shape and create narratives for the messages for the different audiences. And if you start today and use some of these tactics, you can do this on a regular basis. Okay, I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
Thanks so much, Colleen. I'll start with a question and then I'll open the floor to others.
Yeah.
I'm interested. Story package is a new concept for me. Like, as I said, I last worked in PR about 6 years ago. So my question is, back when I was doing PR, working with an agency, we tried to orchestrate the story to the reporter. So we said, this is what we're announcing, and we packaged everything up, and you kind of left the breadcrumbs as if they would follow all of the things that you want them to follow and emphasize. With story package, because there's all those different elements, I'm curious if there's the potential that the reporter like takes pieces and kind of segments them in a way you weren't expecting? Like, is there more risk that they subvert your story?
Great question. And there's lots of elements to it. So first, you're coming from the mindset that in the past, you were giving to the reporter because you had an announcement.
Yes.
So that's one thing. You could put together a story package that might relate to your announcement, but what the story package would do, if you're doing it properly, is you'd have a broader overall story, not just your announcement. So how does your announcement fit into the broader picture? And if you provided the broader picture of what was going on, like more and more companies are doing XYZ, and what does this mean for the customer? That kind of thing. And then your XYZ just fits in there. So you could do it that way. And this is where, as a PR person, you have to think for the long game, right? You want to be working with that reporter. You want them to be contacting you. You want that relationship to be good. So sometimes it's just like giving away free content, right? You got to do that work for them. And then they know that they can trust you. So you're also trying to prove yourself to them. And the other part of the question is that press often does, even if you spoon feed them a bunch of stuff, they're going to take it and go another way anyways. But that's because they're looking at it from their publication's point of view, and because maybe they're seeing things a little bit different than just what you're looking at. So that's the name of the game anyways.
Okay.
Is that they may take it in some other direction. But a PR person, those golden rules, right, is you need to be able to provide all that information to them, and they make the decision about where they're going to take it. There's many layers to that, right? That's really hard to answer, but I hope it gave you some idea.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. A quick follow-up. So in the conventional way of doing PR is you have the news is going to drop on December 1st. And so you have like an embargo to the media until December 1st. And then there's the big announcement that you announce, and then the coverage happens on the same date. So the benefit is that there's a whole buildup and a whole bunch of coverage drops on the same day. So in the new world of like content PR where you're spreading it out, how do you need to make up for that? Like how do you address the losing the maybe potentially diluting the story?
Well, if you're a big company, you're going to answer that a certain way, right? Because you say, we have our trade press, we should get those 10 articles, we should have all that coverage, and here's the way we handle it. But let's say you're a small company, maybe you've had a couple trade press cover you, but maybe they don't cover you every single time. So you have to look at it to say, is this story going to get picked up by 5 or 6 different press? And because of the changing landscape of things, they may not even cover it. So then you've lost everything you have. So that's when you need to lead with, I want to do this contributed article that's going to appear around the same time frame. I'm going to try to get, maybe I have a customer interview. I'm going to submit that video so that shows up somewhere. So it's not the Big Bang theory, it's the rolling theory. And because it's harder and harder to get that straight news coverage that we're all used to, that everybody still thinks, hey, we should be able to get that. It doesn't happen anymore. So that's why the smarter approach is to spread out all the different options.
Got it. Okay. Other questions?
I don't feel like it's changed all that much. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Colleen, one of the things we always talk about is that it's one of the big changes that you sort of pointed to all these things is it's not so much now about a one way, you get your content and then PR delivers it to some, media entity, and then you wait for the results, and it's sort of this one way thing. It's more like all of these strategies that you've talked about are really more about kind of more conversational in a broader sense, right? So it's more give and take. So it's not so much we have a story, we will tell it to you, and then you do something with it. It's more, hey, we have a story, we have these things, and then there's some reaction from the audiences, and then you can it's more, that's sort of more of the rolling thing. So it's partly just a mindset shift, right? It's like you said, not just thinking about the one big announcement. It's how can we sort of continue to evolve the stories? And, obviously content is going to be the engine for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, Michael, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I did. What's a good way to think about conversion from PR these days? I mean, the idea when you had a big press release, boom, everything happens, and now you think, oh, okay, people are going to go and do X. I mean, how do you think about? I like the rolling idea, and I'm thinking that that's the way of thinking about it. So, how do you think about conversion from PR?
Well, it's always been hard, right? Because, how are you attributing it? Are you capturing everybody who landed on your Business Wire press release, or, everybody who came in, from the magazine article link? It's hard to track all those things. So, one of the better ways to do it is to focus on, what are the outcomes? What are you looking for? So typically you put together some metrics where you say, we want to get this type of coverage. We want one, straight news announcement. We want one maybe feature story on it, and we want one guest opinion piece on this. And those are the outcomes you're looking for. And then you're working to make those things happen. And then from those things, you can look to see what's been happening from there. But as people read a lot of stuff, they're looking at things. And how do you know that when they looked at that 3 months ago, that contributed to the decision today? That's, part of the challenge. So that's why you can't look at the straight, linkage like that.
So we're trying to create a rabbit hole and make sure that people go down it. Well, thank you.
It's the black magic. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Love to get your feedback on stuff.
The one thing
Be
that I
sure
wondered
to,
about,
reach out on LinkedIn too. Oh, Craig, yes.
the one thing that I wondered about in here, it's a great presentation, shaping the narrative, et cetera. But what do you see as the role of focus groups, or some way of finding out what the audience is thinking the narrative is before they come into it?
Great question. Well, often your customers, your prospects and existing customers become like your focus group, right? Because you're asking the salespeople, what are you hearing? What do they like? What don't they like? What are the complaints that are happening for customer support? So that in one instance, if you're a startup company, that is one of your first things, because you're not spending money going to separate focus group. And then you're using that data to help make your informed decisions about what you want to be saying. I think one of the things is that it's constantly iterating, right? You try not to be too set in stone, because when you're a startup, you need to be nimble and things are changing. So you just have to be able to adapt and constantly change that. And you're morphing as you're growing along. Great. Did I miss something in chat? Was there anything else? Okay,
I don't think that,
great.
yeah. Well, I
Well,
guess
excellent. I enjoyed talking with everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Colleen. This was a great way to end the year. This was actually our last Zoom meetup of the year.
Okay.
So we will see everyone in 2025.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Colleen.